So we have my first PC build here. Got some of the specs here. You can see some highlights. The Corsair 32 gigs of RAM. We got the GeoForce RTX 2070 graphics card. The MSI X570 motherboard, the NZXT 510i RGB case, and the AMD Ryzen processor. So here's the setup for the motherboard. As you can see, I'm trying to put in the RAM sticks right here. Later on you'll see that I ended up taking those out of the motherboard and putting them back in when the motherboard was actually installed in the case. This didn't really make much of a difference. It was just a recommendation I saw in my first build, so I wasn't really sure what the easiest route to take was for these. So I was wondering first and made sure to line up the channels based on the motherboard's manual. These are RGB as well, so those will light up when the PC is powered on and all. Here I'm taking out the processor. Putting on the processor itself wasn't difficult at all. I just had to align the pins properly and make sure that it was in there the right way before I secured it with the arm. You can see right there I'm trying to figure out the correct alignment, and then of course if you look at the instructions it tells you how to do it. There's a little arrow in the bottom corner of the pins and that's how you line it up. So I went in pretty perfectly. And now the hard part of this was putting on the processor's fan, because one, there was already thermal paste on the fan, and the latches for the fan onto the motherboard were pretty difficult to line up and really didn't lock in. And you'll see here, I'll keep flipping it around so you can watch this struggle for a little bit. Eventually I got it on there and I realized that that lever is super hard and it sounded like it was cracking a little bit and I didn't want to force it, so I called my friend here and he told me that yeah, it is pretty difficult to throw that latch down. You just have to force it and it's not really going to break anything. That's just to make sure that it's securely held on. So now you can see that I already have the SSD installed. I have it into the slot and I just had to screw it down. This is when I really started running into problems because, as you'll see in a little bit, there is a heat sink that is supposed to go over the SSD, and that heat sink can only be installed once the motherboard is in the PC case, but the PC case I had did not have a proper screw slot for it, so I had to go in there and mess with that a little bit and make sure that the right screw slot was in there so that I could secure the heat sink. So now I'm actually going into the case, pop the glass off. It's really easy to pull the panels off. So the glass pops off on this side and then the entire backing on the other side pops off as well. So here's my first attempt at putting the motherboard in. It's one of many. I would definitely recommend triple checking everything inside the case to make sure all the screw ports and holes align properly, because it's just really difficult to move around the motherboard, especially with the CPU fan attached. So here I am looking at that peg that I was talking about earlier for the heatsink. On this PC case, it was literally just a metal peg. when I needed an actual screw hole. So I have the motherboard screwed in, and I'm realizing again that that screw port that I put in did not work for the heatsink. And so now I'm going back to the good old instructions. Those usually help sometimes. And I had to take the motherboard out again, put the right screws in, and put it back in. So as you can see, I had to pull it out again because I still didn't have the right pegs in there. Like I said, that was a very difficult process to move that motherboard around, and it's a trial and error thing, but you want to limit how much you move these parts around because some of them can be really delicate, especially the pins on the motherboard. So now, as you can see, I'm removing the pegs from the PC case because I need to put the correct ones in that allow me to screw in the heatsink. Now the heatsink fits on there properly, which I was hoping for, and the motherboard's officially installed after, was it 4 times taking it out of the PC case? So now I'm securing the 8 screws that secure it into the PC case. These screws came with the motherboard, or with the PC case. They did not come with the motherboard. So I got the motherboard properly secured in there, everything in its right place. And next up is the graphics card. So to put in the graphics card, you first have to take off there's about 8 panels on the back. They're skinny panels. You got to remove the ones that line up with the graphics card HDMI ports. So you pop those off, and then in their place the graphics card will screw in. So here I am taking the wrong ones off at first. I did the top 2 instead of the middle 2. Figured that out pretty quickly, and then I had to take the other one off. Now I can pop the graphics card in to the motherboard, and I can secure it onto the PC case. The screws go right where those 2 panels were that I took off, so if it's really nice in there and secure, and then that's where you plug your monitor in. Here's the hard drive. This was pretty difficult because not this part, plugging the hard drive into the motherboard was the difficult part, because the motherboard plugs have tabs on them that would help secure them into whatever you're plugging them into, but the hard drive ports themselves did not have indents for those pins to slip into, so I ended up just kind of taping it, which is secure enough and you don't see it, so I wasn't really concerned about how it looked. Here I'm securing it on the back of the case. You can't really see it that well, but it's literally just 5 plastic notches and then 1 screw, and it secures it onto the case. Finally, here's the power supply. That goes in really easy. You just put the fan side down. There's 4 screws there. Get them all nice and tight. And obviously once you get your power supply in, there's all sorts of connections you got to make. I didn't show those because it's in really small areas. It's pretty easy though. A lot of the stuff is labeled on the wires and on the motherboard. And yes, this is its first boot up, and everything lit up properly, which is exciting. You can see the RGB memory sticks lighting up, the fans lighting up, the case itself is lighting up. You can see over the left there the monitor is getting boot up, and then this is everything completed. I have the keyboard, the mouse, the screen with Windows installed. And here's a video of the inside, everything lit up. I did a rainbow effect with it. Here's some pictures of it. And yeah, it turned out really well. It runs really smoothly. I'm able to play all the games that I want on it, and do things like edit videos and run a lot of other programs that I'm used to using.